Welcome back to the Table Rush Talk Show. I'm your host, Mischa Zvagintsoff, and today I'm sitting down with Jacques Hopkins, also known as the Online Course Guy. Jacques turned his piano playing journey into a $4 million online course empire. We dive deep into how he turned a childhood hobby into a thriving business and then transitioned to helping others build and scale their own online course ventures. Get ready to learn the secrets behind creating a successful online course from someone who's mastered the art. Jacques, welcome to the show.
What's up, Misha? Thanks for having me, man. That was quite the intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, indeed. I heard you on the Creators Adventure podcast, which was a great podcast. It was a great interview. And what struck me was how you turned your passion for piano into $4 million in revenue, I believe
Mhm.
I heard the number was. Is that right?
Yeah, but passion is a funny word there, Misha. I don't know. I mean, can you like how many passions can you have? Because uh piano is not like it's probably not my top three, you know? It's like something I knew something about, but it's not what I was most passionate about.
Well, awesome. Well, that's great. So, what are your top passions then, and where does piano fall into it?
I mean, certainly my family. I'm more passionate about helping people with online course businesses than I am with piano, which is why I have a second business now as well. I mean, piano is up there, but I'm way more passionate about teaching piano than I am playing piano. Ever since it became a job for me, I don't play much anymore myself. This piano you see behind me, typically just kind of stays leaned against the wall there. Um, but I had a unique story around piano and a unique way that I play and let's get into it a little bit. Like
Please.
I took piano lessons as a kid, like a lot of people do, right? Do you have any background in musical instruments?
Um, I was a skier, snowboarder, hiker, hunter.
Good for you. Good for you. I was none of those things. I was a pretty timid, just kind of parent pleasing kid. They wanted me to take piano lessons, so I'm like, okay. So they put me in it when I was 5 years old, and I stuck with it for 12 years because of the reasons I mentioned, not because I liked it. I did not like it. I was not
Mm.
good at it. I never practiced, but it was like it never occurred to me to go to my parents and say I don't want to do this anymore. I would have never done that. So I stuck with it for 12 years, and I came to this moment where I was with some friends, and they knew I took piano lessons, and there was a piano, and they asked me to play. All right, whatever. And I played a song, and they're like, "What else can you play?" I played another song. What else can you play? I could not play more than two songs. I'd taken piano lessons for 12 years, and I had two songs that I could possibly play, and I didn't even like those two songs. And I was like, okay, this is where we draw the line. Let's. I'm not gonna take these piano lessons anymore. But fortunately, there was another person there that day that knew how to play piano in a completely different way than I knew how to play piano. At that point in time, I thought it was all about sheet music, memorizing these patterns of notes. Uh, I I didn't know any music theory. I didn't really understand how music worked. I didn't even know what a chord was. Like I didn't know very fundamental things because everything that I knew about piano was parroting back what was on this page. And it took me forever to be able to do that. And that's how I knew those two songs is because I spent like 6 months to a year with each one of those, just like figuring out those patterns of notes and how to repeat it back. And so it sounded like I knew what I was doing, but only for those two songs, right? And so he that day he kind of opened my eyes to this whole other world of chords and what's called improvisation. And because he could just play song after song after song after song, and it was amazing, and I was just like completely mind blown. So I took that information and I started kind of looking up chords on my own and trying to figure out that method. I quit going to piano lessons, started playing at my church as an avenue to like use that method. And then fast forward years later, I was trying to figure out an online business, and I was working full time as an engineer. So I hadn't taught anybody piano, and I was just a dabbler with piano. But I had this new way I had been playing the past few years, and so I was like, I wonder if I can make an online course. I started a YouTube channel, started putting some of this information out there, and sure enough, other people like it resonated with other people as well. They liked my story, and then the message I was coming across with you can learn piano quickly. It doesn't have to have sheet music and this crazy music theory. You don't have to be a natural on the piano because I'm not a naturally music person, right? I teach piano like an engineer teaches piano because that's what I am. I was an engineer. So that's kind of the genesis behind it. And that's kind of the explanation why like I was never like the most passionate about piano. That's how it kind of came to be.
It was more like necessity is the mother of invention. My parents tortured me for 12 years. Finally, enough's enough. You got lucky, met somebody who's like, here's how you can make it fun. And and then people resonated with that. They're like,
Yeah,
oh,
exactly.
wait, this can be fun. I remember I did try and learn the drums in my youth, but you need family support. And they were not very excited that I was going to be beating on the drums.
Yeah.
Anyway, side note. Um, so do you remember the teacher's name who or this piano mentor who kind
No, I
of
really, I really don't. And it wasn't a teacher. It was somebody my age at the time. Like I was like
oh
18 years old, and he just had gone down a different path with piano, and he discovered this other way that nobody had ever showed me.
mm. Everybody listening, watching, you can go to theonlinecourseguy.com, theonlinecourseguy.com, and follow along and hear what Jacques and I are talking about. Ultimately, I know that, and I think I heard you say that your big passion right now is teaching, and not only teaching, but teaching people how to create their own courses. And so at the onlinecourseguy.com, you can see all this great information about launching and scaling your online course business. So we will be getting to that here shortly or at some point. I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're not here necessarily to talk about them jumping in a piano course, although it's available.
It's available. I welcome that. It's still running that to this day. It's mostly a passive income business, mostly at this point, but it's still out there. I've redone the course 6 times at this point. Still helping tons of people all over the world to learn piano this way.
And if someone such as myself was like, "Oh, bucket list thing, I want to learn the piano," is it would be a great thing to do? Like let's say, well, I have basically no musical I have taken no courses
Yeah.
or lessons along the way. And if I was like, you know what, that's on my bucket list. I want to knock this out. Would that be a
100%.
great
It's
place to
made
start?
it's made for people that have never even touched a musical instrument before. It can work. Now, a large so most of my students, and I don't want to assume your age in any way, shape, or form, but like most of my students are above 50, 60 years old, over 80% of them, because what happens is they either took piano lessons as a kid like me, but it never stuck and they always hated the fact that they couldn't play even though they took lessons, or it's a bucket list item. They've just always wished they could play but they never devoted the time and energy to it because people are busy, right? You're raising families, you've got a career, this and that. And so I get a lot of people around retirement age that are like, okay, now I've got a little time to spend on this, but I also don't want to spend years learning how to play either, right? So I come across the screen saying, you can learn as little as 21 days without sheet music, play songs you love. It's very appealing to that demographic. So yes, absolutely. You're probably close to my ideal demographic.
I might be right in there.
Yeah. Well, just in terms of like, I know you're not on your main career that you have. You retired
Yeah.
from that. That's a very typical story that I get from my piano students.
Yeah. Yeah. In 50s. So not 60s yet, but 50s. Um,
Yeah, I was thinking like maybe 39, 40.
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. You are my new favorite piano teacher, Jacques. So I know you're passionate about helping people create an online course business, launch and scale. your online course business is literally your tagline. So to get to that point, you're having fun with piano. All of a sudden, people at your engineering job are like, "Hey, I want to play the piano too." Is this what I heard you say? And so you're like, "Oh, well, here's the simple way to do it." And by necessity, oh, you wanted to create a course. I think that's what I heard you say. And so
Yes.
you're like, "Oh, I can teach people this piano thing." So functionally by necessity too, yeah? Or was there
What do you mean
tension in
by
it?
what do you mean by necessity?
By necessity. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is that you know how to play piano and have fun with it, and so people are like, I want to know how to
Yeah.
play piano and have fun with it. So you create a course to help them do that, and you have success with this course, and then people are like, it's all the rage right now, and I think it's still growing. It definitely hasn't peaked. People want to create people want to launch and scale their online course business,
Yeah,
and that is a
100%.
growing market. And so people are like, Jacques, you seem to know how to do this, and you did it with this funny way to play the piano. So
Yeah.
by necessity, it you create it. I guess, does that make sense? Or were you just like, oh, I know I had success with this. I should be teaching it. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Yeah, so for me it was like so far from an overnight success. I mean, to like for me the number was I needed to be making $10,000 a month from it to call it successful, right? So it took a probably a year and a half to get to like $1,000 a month, which was cool. It was like a side hustle, still working full-time job and everything. But that's not where my goal was. Like I wanted to create something that allowed me to not have a boss, like have time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. And so at a minimum, I was wanting to earn like $10,000 a month. And I had to, I heard so many like success stories back then. Like this was 11 years ago. I would hear so many podcasts and things where people were like, "Oh, I got this idea, and so I went and I made the course and I launched it, and like then I went and had dinner with my wife. I come back and check my bank account, and there's $2 million sitting there, right?" And so that's kind of what I was expecting from my, from my implementation, and I launched to no sales, and so it took a long time to figure this out. So I feel like I have a respect for the process and what it takes for kind of learning it the long hard way. But I did kind of after 3 years figure out all the pieces that were necessary to have in place to find success. And at the toward the end of 2016, started got my first $10,000 month. Um, and once I tasted that, like we haven't brought in less than that. We haven't made less than five figures in a month ever since then. So kind of once I got all the pieces in place, it started working and has been working for 8 years now, something like that. So I learned all these things that were not related to the piano, right? I learned marketing, online sales, funnels, offers, driving traffic. I learned all those things and I was fascinated by those things, absolutely fascinated by those things, way more than teaching piano. And so the piano thing was my credibility for being able to talk about and teach those other things, right?
Mhm.
Some people make money in online courses by teaching people how to make money in online courses, right? And that's kind of their main credential. Whereas I'm very proud of the fact that I've been successful with an online course niche that doesn't teach people to make money in any way, shape, or form. It's a hobby, learning piano. Um, and so about a year into having quit my job and found some success, I felt like I could start sharing this other information. So in 2017, I started with a podcast, the online course show. Started putting information out there, but I had to grow yet another audience completely from scratch, right? My piano audience did not translate to that audience. So I started a podcast, started sharing this information, didn't really monetize that business for several years in, kind of like my piano story. But that's how it came to be to where that's my kind of main business passion now and where I spend most of my working hours now is. And the way I do it is with my podcast, and then I have a coaching program that I work with people inside of as well.
So walk me through the podcast, then that sounds like that's your top of funnel
Yeah.
lead gen. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what happened was, well, you'll appreciate this. I was invited to come on somebody else's podcast back in early 2017. And I had this idea for a podcast in my head. So I go on this other podcast. It was and still is a big, what I would call a big audience, big podcast. It was Side Hustle Show with Nick Loper. Um, and I went on that. The podcast aired about 30 minutes after it aired. I had an email from a guy who's like, "Man, I love what you did. Like, I'd love to do the same thing in my niche. Will you coach me?" And so I coached him for one session, and it was a great fit. And I was like, you know what? His name was Nate. I was like, Nate, I kind of have this idea for a podcast. Like, what if I just coach you and record it and turn that into a podcast, and you don't pay me anything for coaching? And so, when I was starting with my podcast, like I wanted it to be like an interview based show where I interviewed other course creators, like have that platform to be able to reach out to other people, because I felt so isolated, right? I'm doing this thing on my own in my home. I want to talk to other people that are teaching, that have successful courses in cooking and guitar and calligraphy, and I knew those people were out there, and I was like, a podcast would be a great way to network with those people and then also share valuable information and grow an audience. But I didn't, like, it was hard for me to reach out to those people without having a podcast yet. So Nate joined me on those like first probably 20 episodes of my podcast. And we just talked. Like he was several steps behind me. And so we would just talk and I would coach him. And then I had like 20 episodes in the books. And I was like, hey, this is a real actual podcast that exists with 20 episodes. Will you join me on it? And so that's how the podcast got started.
So are you people now listen to the podcast and they go, I want to have direct interaction with Jacques and learn how to launch and scale an online course business. So they go to your URL, join the course. Is it seamless like that, or
Mischa, you got
what's
to have a
your?
funnel, man. It's all about the funnel.
Of course. Well,
Yeah.
yes. Okay. Well, talk to me. Let's tell me. Break it down for me. Break
Yeah,
down the
look,
funnel
I
for me.
I
Yeah.
I learned with piano in 21 days the importance of a good sales funnel
Yeah.
that is not salesy, is not pushy, but it works to build trust and rapport with your ideal customer, and just kind of leads them along to the offer and the sale. Once again, in hopefully an authentic way, a non-salesy way. Um, and the goal of the funnel, in my opinion, is two things. First of all, we want to get them believing that they can do the thing. So in my case with my first business, my funnel really works to get people believing that they can learn piano, right? Because just because they like go to my website and whatnot, they're browsing around, doesn't mean that they have that truly have that belief. Maybe they took piano lessons as a kid, they've tried other ways, it's failed, like they're still interested, but like they don't have that belief that they can do it. And so I come in with my message, and within my funnel, most of this happens with educating them with this paradigm shift on and showing them that they could actually do it, even if they have no musical background, even if they don't feel like they have a musical bone in their body, that they don't have an ear for music, that they've never touched a piano before. Like, I help them get through those objections and get them believing that they can actually do it. So that's the first goal of the funnel. The second goal of the funnel is that I get them believing that the perfect way for them to do it is through my program. Because if I get them believing that first thing, but then they go off and hire an in-person piano teacher once a week, I haven't done my job, because like the point is for them to sign up for my program. So I need them to believe I can do it, and that the perfect way to do it is with my program. That's the point of the funnel. And so we do that with a combination of videos, some emails, some web pages, and some urgency that gets them to want to act now. For example, if they sign up by a certain time, they can get 20% off of my piano course. Been very, very effective. So a funnel is very important for those reasons. And so, of course, I have a funnel with my other business as well. And so I typically don't just like promote my coaching program directly with my podcast. I promote the funnel. I say, hey, look, I've got some free training for you guys, free workshop. It's called the Online Course Business Formula. You're going to learn this, this, and this. And there's real value there. It's a funnel. And then in the funnel, I promote my coaching program. And that's how we do it. And that's how we do it for both businesses. And it works really well.
I love it. So the funnel, anybody who's in funnel land, many of my listeners are in funnel land, know about funnels, and there's the funnel of like a funnel that's just one like a funnel. So they go it's multi-step, whatever, sales page or a landing page or call it what you will. I'm my head's a little fuzzy right now with the lingo, but I think you get what I'm saying. Hopefully, the people listening are and appreciate my my babbling right now. But I think what you're saying as well is we've got a multi-step funnel or multi-stage funnel or a process. So
Yeah,
it's
it's a
it's almost like
process.
the sales cycle, the funnel of, hey, they've listened to the podcast, now go to the page, then they get some emails, then it's da 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 da. So
Mhm.
it could be like, what was it, about a 2 week cycle or something like that, typically?
Yeah, I
Or
think my funnel for piano in 21 days is about 12 days in total. For OCG online course guys, honestly, it's like maybe 6 days.
Mm. And what's that landing page that you said that you're promoting on your podcast?
Yeah, so it's so for my podcast, I registered the domain oc.show because in an audio, like when I'm using my voice, like I want to make it as easy as possible rather than saying theonlinecourseguy.com/whatever. Da, 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 da.
Yeah,
So I'll say like go to oc.show/workshop, for example, and join and get that free training. And then I have their email address and I can market to them and whatnot.
cool. There it is. I'm staring at it. The online course guy, exclusive free training from Jacques Hopkins. Cool. So they listen to your podcast, they get value, excuse me, you're like, hey, go to ocshow.com or oc.show
oc.show. Yeah.
excuse me, oc.show/workshop. Get your free course, great value there. Now they've opted into your thing. They what we might call a lead magnet, perhaps
Yes.
lead squeeze
Yes.
page, something like that.
Yes.
Awesome. Now they're on your email list and they get what, three, four, five, six soap opera sequence? Yes, six emails or
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean by soap opera sequence. I wouldn't say it's exactly like that. It is the value in that particular funnel, the value is in the webinar. So the first couple emails are really making sure they've watched the webinar, which does have a sales pitch at the end of the webinar. And
okay.
then after that, then we push to a sales page and try to sell the program for a few
Okay.
days, and then it's over and back to our regular scheduled viewing, and we send out a newsletter once a week.
Awesome. I'm seeing here view the workshop now. So that is an evergreen
Mhm. It's just an on-demand video.
webinar.
We don't pretend it's live or anything. It's just a pre-recorded video on a page.
Yep. And at the end of that there's a pitch.
Yes.
Amazing. And how many webinars did you do? How about this? When you started your piano course, how long till when was the moment that you knew I'm sticking with this because this is working and I'm making money?
So what happened was at the beginning of 2016, I quit my job, but not because it was working yet. 6 months prior to that, we had our first kid, and my wife retired essentially at that point. So she's at home, baby's at home, making about $1,000 a month. We were doing the whole Dave Ramsey thing. We were doing pretty good financially, saving money. So we're like, okay, I'm like, look, babe, like this isn't gonna work if I can't spend more time on it. I'm working a full-time job, working a lot. Working my way up. I'd worked for like 8 years at the same company, like working my way up there. Um, I was like, if this is gonna work, I got to spend more time on it. So we made the decision for me to come to me for me to quit and live off essentially savings. We had enough savings to live very frugally for up to a year, very frugally. Um, so I came home, I quit my job, very scary. Um,
And
started
night out
working.
was Taco Bell. That was like very frugally. Every 2 weeks, Taco Bell is the date night.
I don't think we did date nights during this time.
Okay.
Um, so we're going through the year, and like I still like it sucked because I still couldn't figure it out. Um, and I was putting the time into it for the first time, and still like month after month, like three sales, like $1,000 a month. Um, and in October of that year, so we're like 8 months into the year, my wife tells me she's pregnant with our second kid, and still $1,000 a month. So I started looking for jobs. I went on a couple interviews, but that's exactly the moment it started working. November 2016, the very next month was that first month I hit um, $10,000. And
And
the reason, the last piece was, so this is a long way to answer your question. All right. For me, the last piece was a funnel. Okay. So that's what I was missing. With the same traffic coming in, the same course, the same offer, the same website, everything else was the same. I just added in a funnel. That's what 10x'd my business. It literally 10x'd my business overnight. And the way I learned about it was I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn, and he had a guest on his podcast who was making a lot of money with online courses. I'll tell you, his name was David Siteman Garland. That was his guest. And the guest, David, on the episode was almost exclusively talked about this funnel that he had in place to sell online courses. And he walked you through exactly how his was set up and this and that. And so I just listened to that episode several times and I did exactly what he said to do. And so that's basically how I discovered truly what a funnel was and how effective it could be. And I implemented it in my business, and that was the last piece for me. So that's how I get an intro to funnels and when I first implemented it.
so how were you selling before? Were you doing one-off literal sales calls or something? Or what was the how were you selling your course
Yeah.
before the funnel?
So I had a YouTube channel. Traffic was coming in. They would go to piano121days.com, and that was basically a sales page. So they could come there and then they could watch a little video that was horrible, and like there was copy on the page that was horrible, and like there was a buy now button. That's not a funnel. Like
Not,
I
not
mean,
a
some
funnel.
people might call that a very, very, very rudimentary funnel, but like that's not a funnel, right? So instead, after that, they would go to Piano in 21 Days because at the time I didn't have like a full website. Now I have a full website. You can go to an about page and testimonials and whatnot. But I switched it to a basic landing page that said, "Hey, the course is not available right now, but right now you can download this free workbook, learn 36 popular songs in 5 days. Give me your email. I'll give you the workbook." And so people started opting in for this workbook, and that was the start of the funnel. And then they would start getting some videos and then a pitch, and then there'd be a closed cart. And so that's what it looked like before, was just a sales page. And that because I was making three, 2 to 4 sales a month, right? So people had the opportunity to buy, but I just hadn't built up enough like trust and rapport with people. And then there was no urgency on the back end either.
Mm. Did you that so I believe it was November 2017, I think you said it was that first month of
2016, yeah.
10,000 2016 of 10,000. Did did you have a pre-recorded webinar? Did you just start pre-recorded or
Yeah, I
you're
didn't. One of the things I tried in 2016 was live webinars. That was all the rage back then. I signed up for Webinar Jam, and I was trying live webinars. That was a flop. That did not work. The type of funnel I implemented is called a product launch formula funnel, made famous by Jeff Walker. Um, so there was no webinar yet. I actually ended up adding a webinar to my funnel, a pre-recorded webinar, right, to
yeah.
my funnel a couple years later, and that increased conversion rates even more. But at the time, it was like these 3 pre-launch videos that I made, and then a better sales page with a distinct open and close cart period.
Mm. And so 2 years later, you switch to what is now more traditional evergreen webinar
Yeah.
style that you have now.
Man, to be honest with you, I just kind of added the webinar to my existing funnel. So I still have the three videos and I still have that same workbook, the Learn 36 Popular Songs as the front end.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty elaborate funnel at this point because I've like added onto it over the years. Um, but I just added it into it.
Well, let's talk about, I want to dive into your online course guy funnel, but maybe tell me before we dive into that funnel and how you're finding the people to help, tell me about what you're doing. Like, what is it? What's going on here? Obviously, you're helping people launch and grow and scale their course, but like, go, I'm sure you've got more to say than just that.
Yeah. So basically, like, how do I help people?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So my audience, it turned out to my audience for what I abbreviate to OCG, um, the online course guy, is it turns out it's a pretty even 50-50 split between aspiring course creators and course creators. So that's who end up finding a show called the online course show because a lot of people are where I was where they have some semblance of a business in place and they're making like $1,000 a month, but that's not good enough, and they're trying to figure out how to scale. Other people are like, I really want to create an online course. I need to start finding resources on how to do that. And they'll go to their podcast app and search online courses and find the online course show. So, like I said, it's a pretty even split between the two. And so I have a program that helps those two types of people. I have two programs, depending on which type of person it is. And I started with the one that's more for existing course creators because that's who I felt like was a bigger part of my audience, but it turns out it was more of an even split. So a few years back, I launched a coaching program that was designed for course creators looking to scale, and then I just kept getting people over and over again, like, "Hey, what about me? Like, I need the beginning steps," and so I added a second program called Genesis courses, as well. So now those are my two offers, my two programs, Genesis courses and next level coaching. With Genesis, it's like kind of like with piano, it's like there's no prerequisites. Like come to it wherever you're at, and we'll start from the very, very, very beginning on
Mm.
setting all of this up. And then with next level, man, people are just in all kinds of different niches, and I just
Yeah.
help them with making sure their course is good enough, making sure their offer is good enough, making sure they have a funnel in place that's good enough, making sure they're driving traffic, generating testimonials, setting up, systems and automation and outsourcing in their business and whatnot. So those are the kinds of the things I help people with.
I love it. I'm looking at Genesis courses right now. Build a profitable online course business from the beginning.
From the beginning, you get it? From the beginning.
From the beginning. I love it. Um, well, let's talk about that one first, perhaps Genesis courses. So how long is it? What are you doing? Um, I mean, I don't mean to be ambiguous, but like hey, this is in this course, 5 weeks, you're going to go from taking your idea to course and have some traffic, or walk me through it maybe.
Yeah. So it's a coaching program. So it's very high touch. And we ask people to actually commit for a year. It's a year long program. And when they come in, there's pre-recorded training. There's a course. There's a course called Genesis Courses that they get access to, and it's a step-by-step process that they can go through to identify their niche, to start building an audience, to build an email list, building a funnel, building an offer, building your course. Like the big misconception people have about online courses is like the biggest thing you have to do is build a course, and that's just not reality. I made that mistake. Like when I got the idea in 2013, I was like, okay, I'm going to make an online course. So I'm going to make an online course. And like, that's what I did. But it turned out it was way more complicated than that. So we certainly show people how to make a course, but that's just one small part of it. So there's all the pre-recorded training. But we also have live Q&As multiple times a month. And then we offer feedback, on the work that people are doing. So it's like I said, it's very high touch. It's not just about, you going through and then applying the things that you're learning. Like everything that you do, you submit it to me and my team to review and provide you feedback so that we can, give you our expertise and make sure you applied this stuff correctly. So there's feedback, there's the community of other people in there. Um, so yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that it takes a year. We've had people in the program for 6 weeks do a $60,000 launch. But we like the more we get to know people, the better we are at helping people too. So just because you get version one of your course and funnel and everything in place doesn't mean that there's not room to grow and make version two of all those individual things as well. So that's why it's set up as a kind of a year-long commitment. But then we also have opportunities for people to upgrade to the other program as well, and sometimes that happens before 12 months too, depending on where somebody is in the process.
Mm. Do you mind talking about the cost? Obviously, it's a discounted cost if they take action now.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's roughly $500 a month, somewhere
Yeah.
around that ballpark for Genesis, and then the next level coaching program is about twice that.
Mm. Are they on these Q&As getting access to you at all, or is it all
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
team?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have kind of my right hand guy. His name's Renato. He's amazing, and he's like my operations manager. So he helps me do the day to day operations of both Piano in 21 Days and Online Course Guy. And
Hmm.
then when he's not doing that, he's also like a coach inside of my program as well. So he's involved. I'm involved. We also have a dedicated social media coach inside the program as well. But the Q&A, I actually call them office hours because it's like, hey, you're struggling with anything, you want to just talk through anything, I'll be on camera, join me, other people, we can talk through it, super casual. So yeah. And then depending on, like, I mentioned we offer feedback. Like it depends what it is, because all of me and my team, we all have the things that we're good at. So like sometimes Renato will review something. Sometimes our social media coach will provide feedback on it. Sometimes I'll provide feedback. Like I'm very much in there as well and work with people in there as well, but I do have a team helping support too.
Amazing. The three main reasons a funnel work, I heard you say on the Creator's Adventure podcast with Brian. You said urgency. You sped through them pretty quick, but there was some availability, some discount. Uh, do you remember that part?
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
go
yeah. So
ahead,
what
talk
it
to me
is
about that.
is
Yeah,
there's three ways to implement urgency at the end of your funnel.
yeah,
Okay. So you want me to go over what those three are?
yeah. Please.
Yeah, so urgency is really powerful, and I attribute a large portion of that 10xing I talked about back in 2016 to the simple fact that there was urgency involved that there wasn't before. And so urgency is simply when something is going away at a certain time, right? Not to be confused with scarcity, which has to do with quantity. There's only a limited quantity of these available. Not something we typically deal with online courses because it's a digital product. There should be like a lot of copies of it available, right? So we're talking about urgency, which is something does go away at a certain within a certain time frame, right? On this date, this is going away, and there's three main ways you can do that with online course businesses. My favorite way would be a discount. A discount is going away. Um, that is the form of urgency we're most used to in just everyday life. Like the clothing store down the street is running a sale, and this type of clothing is on 20% off until Friday, right? That's very, very normal. Um, and it works, right? People love a good deal. For years I avoided offering any sort of discount on my products because there were a lot of people out there saying never discount your product because it kind of devalues it. But one day I was like, I've bought programs because there was a discount. Like I like discounts. Like I'm pretty sure my people would enjoy discounts too, and I don't think they're any less likely to use it or get the result as long as it's done correctly and I'm not like discounting at 99% or anything like that. So so that's my preferred way to go is to offering some limited time discount. The second form of urgency is the availability, which means the whole offer just goes away. You can't get in after a certain time. And I think maybe that how your membership works to where like once a year they can get
Yeah.
in or something like that. And then that's the urgency you're using. It's
Yeah.
availability. Like it's going away. The whole thing is going away. And I that's actually how I first set my piano stuff up when I first did the funnel and everything. It was like the whole offer would go away. Like it wasn't available and then become available and then it would go away. But I had that all set up on an evergreen basis. So not like you're doing where it's like once a year it's available for everybody and then it's not. Like it was very much an evergreen situation to where it would be available for one person on one day and not and somebody else not based on when they started the funnel, you know?
Yes.
And eventually I just like I got enough messages from people like, what are you talking about? That this is not available. It's a digital product. Like, of course it's available. Like, stop being an unethical marketer. I mean, I didn't get a lot of those messages, but that's kind of when eventually I'm like, all right, well, let me try a discount instead. And it turns out it worked even better. The
Yeah.
third form of urgency is for some bonus to go away.
Mm.
Not my favorite option. It typically doesn't work as well as the other two, but that very much depends on what that bonus is, right? And then you can even combine that with like you could combine bonus and discount. Like, hey, on this date, this price and this thing are going away. And that's just you want to have some sort of urgency because it's just really, really effective.
Mm. So I'm going to recap this, what you just said. Uh, Three main reasons an offer, or you said it so much better than I. You've been doing that a lot on this episode, by the way. You're recapping my questions
Let's
very
go really
eloquently.
simple. Three types of
Yes,
urgency. Three
yes.
types of urgency.
Three types of urgency: scarcity, discount, bonus.
So replace scarcity with availability. Availability, discount, bonus.
Availability, discount, bonus. Perfect. Got it. My goodness. Um, Availability. I've lost the ability to type too. Yeah, so Stu McLaren is big on the limited availability where he builds to these big offers, and
Hmm.
sometimes he'll have backdoor offers or big events, if you want to call it that, right? So he opens the door, closes them, opens the door, closes them, and he's pretty good at it. But I do love the idea of a discount that's going to be going away. Tell
Hmm.
me, can people buy at the regular price ever?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So that's the key when you choose of the three forms of urgency, if you choose the one that's a discount, that means you also should make it available at the full price every day because that's part of your selling point, right? When you get to your pitch, you're like, hey, look, this is the price. The price is normally $1,000. You can go to my website right now and see that. You can go buy anytime at
Mm,
$1,000. But right now, like for the next 3 days, you can get $200 off and that choice is yours, right? That's how we do it for Piano in 21 Days now. Like I said, now we have a full website with all kinds of things, and one of the main menus at the top is enroll. You can click enroll at the top, go to a nice sales page that pitches you the course. We have two tiers to the course. The bottom end is 497 and the top end is 997. And people like we get a couple of sales a month there, not much,
mm,
right? Not much. The vast majority of sales happen within the funnel at the discount, which it's discounted roughly 20%. People can get in uh, for the price of either 397 or 797.
mm,
And what the two tiers are the bottom tier is basically the course, the online course, Piano in 21 Days.
mm.
The top tier is the course plus everything else I've ever offered. So there's a lot of value in going the top tier. So the majority of our sales end up happening at 797 because most people choose the top end package and they buy it within the funnel.
Mm. You're teaching people through your Genesis course and then and the upgraded one from there how to do all the stuff we're talking about, uh, create the funnels, create the urgency, languaging, all that fun
Yes.
stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me about helping people scale. So someone comes to you and is making what, 5,000 a month, 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month, and they're
Mhm.
they want to level up from there. Is that
You know, Misha, just yesterday I recorded a podcast episode called something like five ways to scale your online course business or something like that. So this is a good topic and something I help people with quite a bit. One of the big things is just trying to help them identify where the bottleneck is, where the low hanging fruit is that they can improve. So that's one thing is to like look at it, like let's look at the different departments of your business. Let's look at the traffic sources. Let's look at the funnel. Let's look at the offer. Let's look at the course and let's look at your testimonials and where's the bottleneck, right? Which one's the
mm,
bottleneck?
mm,
Are you not bringing in much traffic, but everything else is converting well? Okay, well, you 5x your traffic, you 5x your entire business. Great. That might be it for you. Do you not have an effective funnel in place? Well, then that may be where we can start. Um, just significantly improving one of those areas has the potential for you to scale your entire business.
mm,
Some people don't even have some of the areas in place and they can just add them in and then that's effective. Another thing that I suggest that people don't do enough is surveying their audience, especially their buyers, to understand more about them, any deficiencies in the product, motivations for them to have signed up, but even surveying your non-buyers too, like asking them why they haven't signed up and getting feedback from the people on the other side. Because as the creator, we make a lot of assumptions that maybe are not accurate. So
mm.
surveying your audience is really big as well.
What?
Um,
Oh, go. Sorry.
no, you go, you go.
I was going to say, when did you start adding team and or VAs and or help in your journey?
Um, I hired a Filipino full-time VA fairly early in the process. I was still working a full-time job, but it was very trendy because you could get great talent with great English skills for pretty inexpensive. So I probably hired somebody before I was ready. I also had a misconception that I needed to hire somebody full time, um, and so that's a big thing today. Is like people are like, oh, I can't afford somebody full time. Well, most people don't need somebody full time. Like at least get somebody for 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, something like that. Um, but I guess the real and she worked for me for a couple of years, but she was just doing like very basic tasks that were very repeatable. The big one was a couple months after things really started working. I was getting a lot of new students, and I was getting a lot of I was having to do a lot of customer support,
Mm,
frankly. And so I hired a customer support person. I found her on Upwork. She actually still works for me to this day. She's worked for me for 8 years probably. So she handles the email inbox and just replying to people um, from a customer support perspective. She can answer like questions, like if somebody can't log into their account. She can
mm,
also ask piano. She can also answer piano related questions as well.
mm.
So
7. Oh, go. Sorry.
I just like I looked up and I was like, man, just like most of my working hours are now spent on customer support. Like let me outsource this. That's basically how I got started.
Mm. Um, 70-30 revenue split between your piano course and your helping build the course.
Like on a month to month basis today, you're saying?
Yeah.
Um at this point, OCG has passed up piano, and rightfully so, because I spend 99% of my time there. So yeah, it's probably about that. I think 70-30 in favor of OCG at this point is fair.
Are you letting the piano course taper off? Not even going to create new content for it? Just not that this is a bad thing. It's just you're like, I'm kind of going to let it just be its own thing and spend all my time on OCG.
Uh, yeah, I hate hearing when people put it that way, but I just don't have very much motivation and drive to create piano content. I created the sixth version of my course about 3.5 years ago, and I'm very proud of it. It is by far the best version, and that version can live for a long time. What I wish I had the motivation to do was continue to make YouTube videos and content marketing.
Mm,
because traffic is like slowly slows down. We still,
mm,
it still makes 5 figures a month and we still generate traffic from a YouTube channel that hasn't put in any new content in 2 years. So, maybe one day I'll get back into it. So it's very passive at this point. And that's if I wanted to get back into it, it would just be all about content marketing because the funnel works. It's a great offer. The course works. Like it genuinely helps people. Um, there's a lot of there's a lot of case studies for me to know that that's true. But I just enjoy making content on this side more. So that's where I am. That's where my headspace is these days.
why not sell it and or bring in some young piano guy or gal to go find some TikTok piano person and stick
Yeah.
them on it?
Look, all right, I'm open to selling it. Um, the problem with selling it is that I never intended to sell it, and it's very focused on me.
Mm,
So I built a brand. Like my name isn't in the brand, but I built a brand where my name is synonymous with the brand, right?
mm,
You go to piano21days.com. What's at the top? Hi, I'm Jacques. My picture. Hi, I'm Jacques. I
mm.
help regular people learn piano with the fastest online piano course. And then I'm in all the videos, I'm in all the course. Like there are steps I could take to pull myself more and more out of it. And like I said, I'm open to selling it. But I know that that could limit that. The second option you presented is probably more realistic and would even be a path to possibly selling it as well.
Mm.
I just haven't put in that time and attention to finding the right person yet.
No pressure. I was just curious.
Yeah.
I'm
If
not
you
trying
got
to
anybody, let me
keep you
know.
up at night. What's that?
Yeah. It's my baby. Like I don't want it to just like fade away to
Yeah,
the
I
abyss.
know. It's not, and you've created this incredible asset that is serving at a high level. Not
Yeah.
to just throw out terms that we all hear all the time, but you have created something very cool that's serving at a high level. Paid versus organic traffic. Have you ever gone down the paid traffic rabbit hole?
A little bit, man. So like Facebook ads, we've never made work. Never, ever, ever. We've never found that combination to work. Only ever wasted money there. We even to this day will spend a little bit each month, like a $1,500 each month on Google ads, because with Google ads there is intent behind that. Like people are actively searching how to play piano, learn piano fast, like, and we'll show up for searches like that. Whereas with Facebook ads, it's more interruptive. There's not intent behind it. So we've had trouble, putting those in front of the right people at the right time. So for my niche where people are very actively searching for a problem that I have the solution to, um, Google Ads has worked better, but it's not the main traffic source. Like we don't rely on Google Ads. Like we could turn it off and we'd still make a lot of money from it.
Let's focus on the course thing because I think it's interesting in our conversation. You refer back to learn the
Yeah.
piano when
Yeah.
it's like, oh, but that's sort of in the background. So now talking about the 70% of your business, the course, the OCG, um, most of it is from your podcast and $1,500 a month secondarily on ads, Google ads, or is Google ads specifically for piano?
No, just piano. Yeah. And oftentimes you'll find like I'll answer questions in terms of a piano because like that's the one people can relate to more, right? If I only ever talk
Oh,
about my course business that helps people with course businesses, it's just like it's so meta, like people don't they want to know how it can work in piano, guitar, cooking, gardening. Like they like that
um,
resonates with people more. You know what I
I
mean?
see. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
why I usually come back to that. The I don't spend any ads on OCG. We spend a little bit with piano, but no, look, I love podcasting, man. It's all of my traffic for this brand comes from my podcast. And I started it 7 years ago, so I have a big backlog. Um, but it's a very, very healthy business on a very, very small to medium sized podcast. It's been great.
Let's,
Starting a podcast is one of the best business decisions I've ever made.
yeah, speak more to that. Go ahead.
Yeah. And one of the key drivers of growing the podcast has been appearing on other people's podcasts. Um, so I got a big break when Nick Loper invited me on his podcast back in 2017. I've now been on his podcast, I think, 4 times. And I mean, his podcast has to be like 50 times bigger than mine. He's
Yeah.
got a huge, huge audience. But I will say, like, I mean, I don't know how, I know you help people with like getting on other podcasts. You obviously have a podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know how many pitches you get for, people pitching to come on your podcast, but I get a ton and they're
Yeah.
mostly stinkers. Um, I haven't done it a lot, but I've got 100% success rate on pitching other podcasts. Um, I got on Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income podcast from a pitch. Um, I got on Choose FI, which is a pretty big podcast. And then one other music related podcast. So I think it was only 3 or 4 times I did it. And I need to be doing it more. I think it's a really effective marketing strategy, especially if you have a podcast, because you're
Yeah.
getting in front of people that already listen to podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So you're the expert on this topic. I'm just
Yeah.
rambling at this point.
No, I love it. You're helping sell what I do. There's so many. Well, you're speaking to the call to action aspect of it, which is so powerful, but there's also the partnering aspect of it that's so powerful where
Yeah.
you can leverage, email lists, audiences on a deeper level, many opportunities. I think that that's the thing that doesn't get spoken about a lot. I mean, the call to action piece is great. Go to guestingguide.com, learn how to guest speak on podcasts, blah, blah, blah. But there's really so many other benefits from it. Um, you, I'll let you speak to that for a second if you want to.
No, I'm just go. So that's guestingguide.com. Like I'm
Yeah,
intrigued
yeah,
now.
yeah. Go to guestingguide.com.
Look at this.
Yeah,
Guesting guide. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This looks great.
yeah,
I'm gonna have to check this out.
yeah.
Download my free guide. This looks like the start of a funnel.
It is the start of a funnel indeed.
Nice.
Do it. Yes, yes. I have many of the pieces in place. I'm just starting to give my master class. It's been a fire hose for me of information and learning and teaching and
Yeah.
doing and I've mastered the process of getting on other people's podcasts. I mean, I've been on 20 podcasts so far this year. Um, Now teaching people how to do it, and so watching them have success. What am I trying to say about this? It's just a lot. Learning so much, learning,
Mhm.
learning, learning, and I'm very excited now to, be doing my master class, which I have gotten to start giving. So giving and I'm using the of the three that you said, we already talked about this limited availability. So I get people on the wait list, and now I'll be promoting to the wait list saying, "Hey, my master class is coming up. Doors are going to be open." I actually will. There's a whole funnel behind it. The other fun thing is most of the podcasts I've spoken on, such as yours, I haven't spoken on yours, but assuming I get to the level where I get invited,
Yeah.
um, partnership opportunities. So many of the podcasts that I've spoken on want to teach to their audience on how to get on podcasts to build that channel of traffic, right? So I've created swipe files. So if you were like, yeah, Mish, I'd love to promote your masterclass to my audience because they need to know how to do this. Great. I've got pre-made swipes that you could have to send out. So all that's sort of happening in the background right now for me. Um, but anyway, thank you for listening to that and letting me pitch that right there. You had said something before we even started. You said you have a podcast pitch that works so well, and you teach your course creators how to this pitch. Is this the one that you have used to 100%, or do we have two versions of your pitch?
Dude, look,
Oh,
I mean, I'm a little self-conscious, right? Like with this topic, because like I said, you're the expert here. So I'll say what I've done, but feel free to critique it as well. So I just noticed how bad the pitches are, like how low the bar is, because I have a podcast and I get pitched all the time. So for me, I personally don't like it when somebody is pitching somebody on like on their behalf, right? I like to hear from the person themselves. Now I think I've said yes to a pitch like 3 times, maybe. I think in every time, maybe two out of the three, like I already knew who the person was. And I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, of course I want that person on my show. So I think it was just one time where that was like somebody was pitching somebody else. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know who that is. Like, I would be honored to have them on my show. But in general, when it's something else, it feels like they're playing a volume game. And then they're all typically that type of pitch is also like very artificial. Like, oh, Jacques, I listened to this episode titled whatever. And like, I love when you talked about like this one very specific thing. Like, and they say, like, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. It's like, no, you're not. Like, you're being so disingenuous right now. Sorry. Can you tell
No,
this is
I love it.
um
Go.
yeah. So that's the first thing. Like it's a big red flag when it's like not the person themselves. The biggest thing is simply like when I successfully pitch people, I made it very clear what the value I would bring to that particular audience. So it was the value, but also like the specific value I was offering was it was specific for their audience, right? So the all of my pitches were not the same. Like I showed that I genuinely knew that podcast, um, and could like specifically laid out here's exactly the type of value that I could give on your podcast, right?
Mm.
And that's what people don't do in their pitches is it's a lot about them. Here's what I've accomplished. Like it's not a like maybe they'll touch on the subject, but it's clearly about them and they have something to promote. And it's just and they're faking that they like my podcast. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I do. Um, so is that your model or your framework that you're teaching your course creators? Hey, like actually listen to the podcast. And I think it's very effective.
Yeah.
Obviously, listen to the podcast and be like, all right, who is our audience? How can I serve this audience? And let's not make it about me, but let's make it how make it easy for the podcast host to say yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, how am I bringing value? Perhaps even here's a title of what the episode could be. And here's some talking points. I don't know if you go that deep or you don't need to. I'm just, those are definitely ways to do it for sure. That could
Yeah.
be effective. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And in the training that I have for my people, I walk through like 5 levels of podcast pitches, and like level 1 are the awful ones, and then like level 2, here's the ones that are like still bad but slightly better. Like here's level 3 is like starting to look good, level 4, and then level 5. And really, like we want all of ours to be level 5 because, in my opinion, once again, you share with me what you know. You're the expert here, but
Sure.
like this podcast pitching is a quality game, not a quantity game. And most people are
Mm,
playing it as a quantity game,
yeah.
right?
S- So so tell me what is the level five? And I'm appreciating this and loving this, and I appreciate both hacks or both strategies. The volume game. I mean, volume game, you still got to be bringing value, or it's just irritating, right? So if you're going to go volume, at least have a way to make it be where you're bringing value at a minimum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you're going the more, like you're saying, you're going to go less volume. I don't know what we would call it, but you're doing one a week instead of 200, instead of 50 a week, because you're
Mm-hmm.
taking the
Right.
time to dig and appreciate. So give me the level five breakdown. You've got bring
Yeah. I
value.
mean,
What else? Go ahead.
yeah, it's essentially like it's been a couple years since I did the training, so I don't remember the exact
Sorry.
bullet points to be honest with
Yeah.
you. But it's like the key is like essentially what I already said was like we want to like very truly show that we understand who their audience is and specifically how we could provide value to that audience
Yeah.
in a very like selfless way, um and being fully honest. Like I think my subject is usually like this is a podcast pitch, like
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
honest, it's real, it's raw. It's like there's nothing fake about it. That's been my formula, and I've like that's the message I share with my people, and they use it. They've used it to great success as well. But like I said, a lot of this stemmed from just like all the bad pitches that I get.
Mm, I love it. So great. Thank you for sharing that. And I didn't mean to press you so hard on it, but
No,
I
no,
love
all
it.
good.
Yeah, you've got a successful podcast that you've had for a long time. And I've done both and do both. I'll tell you what, I have one. This is going to be, uh, might surprise you, but you could definitely teach it to your beginning course creators. So I think what happens is some people, when they want to start getting on podcasts, are like, man, I don't have anything to offer, or they fall into that imposter syndrome a
Hmm.
little bit, right?
Yeah,
And so it's like, I don't know what I talk about, or even that bare bones basic, right? Like they say they would know, but they don't. They're like, what if I
yeah,
got on? Oh my God. Um, this simple pitch has worked incredibly well to start a conversation. And it's, hey, so I would say, for example, hey, Jacques, I found your uh, podcast. Looks like a great show. Are you looking for interesting guests? If so, what's the process to get on?
I like that.
And send. And then you get engagement and they tell you what they need and or want, and you can sort of provide what they need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. It reminds me of one I did get recently, and the subject was how do you prefer to get podcast guest pitches? And he was basically saying, here's a little about me. I came across your show. Just curious, what's the best way to guest pitch to you? So it's kind of similar to what you're talking about. You're not like jumping straight in with the pitch. It's like, hey, how would you like me to do this pitch?
Yeah,
And that one example was just happened to be one of those where like I knew who it was already, and I'm like, holy crap, like I want that guy on my podcast.
for sure.
His name is Kevin Schmidlin. He's got a podcast, Grow the Show. It's about growing a podcast. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with
Yeah,
that,
yeah, I am.
but
Yeah.
I listened to his podcast, and so as soon as I saw it, I was like, no pitch
Heck
necessary, man. Like if you want to come on my show, I'd be honored. But
yeah.
I think I love that you said that. That sounds great too.
Yeah. And I'll give you another little fun thing. If any of your audience has a podcast, this is a great thing to do. So you send that out. Hey, found your show. Looks cool. Are you looking for interesting guests? If so, what's the process? Send.
Yeah,
And then you get the reply. And oftentimes it's like, oh, who is it for? You or somebody else? And the conversation starts. Or it's like, or no, we're all booked up already.
yeah,
The other thing is, it's rarely with that simple of a pitch, it's never just yes, book here. But with what you're talking about, if you have a value add offer, oftentimes you will just get, yeah, that sounds great, book here, right? But we're not talking about that. Or you get no response. So if you get no, we're all booked up, or no, I didn't like your pitch, or no, whatever, I reply back, and this works 50% of the time. I say, oh, thanks for replying so quick. Noted that you aren't booking male guests right now because you're focusing on women. I get that a lot. Um, but would you like to be a guest on my show? It's a top 2%
ah,
podcast, right? And
yeah.
you can do a counter offer. And so you could put any counter offer you wanted in there.
That's a great tip too. I like that.
Yeah. And I got one more for you, because I'm sending out invites all the time, is if you send out 20 invites, simple like that simple script that I said, if you send out 20, you get about a 10% response rate of just what I said. Yes, no, yes, and something like that, or there's no response. And what happens is on those 18 that you didn't get a response, if you literally just resend that email in 3 or 4 days, just hit reply and just want to say, hey, I want to make sure you saw this. Send it again. You get a whole new round of 10% engagement.
Hmm.
And because what happens is it's like you might be super busy. I'm sure you are, or maybe your team does most of your stuff for you, so you have a ton of spare time. But uh, the second time you send it, you will oftentimes get, oh yeah, I meant to get to this before. yes, here's the process, or yes, here's what we're looking for, whatever. Anyway,
Those are some great tips, man. I mean, we're on your podcast right now, but personally, I really appreciate you sharing those with me.
yes, good, 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 good. You know what? We could go on, and we've gone long, and I appreciate everything you've said, and I actually have a list of questions, but we can save it for next time. Um, because I know you've helped a ton of people, and I was hoping to get some stories from you on people that you've helped and serve, and some transformation, but save it for next time. Before we hit stop here, is there anything you'd be remiss that you didn't get to say, highlight, or anything like that?
Let me just, on that note, I'll just share one story of somebody with you. One of my favorite students I've had, his name is Spencer Russell. His website is toddlersread.com. He teaches very young kids how to read, or more specifically, he gives the parents the tools to teach their toddlers how to read. It's very effective. He's now been very, very successful. And when I first talked to Spencer a couple of years ago, he was he had sold a few courses, but less than $1,000 a month. And I like I didn't want to let him into my coaching program because he specifically told me that like he was at kind of the end of his rope financially and was gonna have to put it on a credit card. But he was like begging me to let him in. And he's at this point, he's just so impressive. He's probably the most successful student I've ever had. Like I'm not like trying to brag on myself. I'm just trying to brag on Spencer and what's possible out there. He's doing like $1 million a year with a $200 course now. You can look him up. He's got over 1.5 million followers on Instagram and another 1.5 on TikTok. In just like 2.5 years. So people are out there in all kinds of niches. Now he's just like the most driven and motivated person I've ever been around. Um, but he's somebody I worked with and has been a crazy success story.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I guess I do have two more questions for you that I want to give you an opportunity to answer. One, I'm thinking people, I know there's people listening that want to create a course, and they're thinking this imposter syndrome. And they're like, yeah, but I can't put myself out there, or yeah, I don't know how to market it, or yeah, just this internal struggle. Like, what would you say to that person?
Man, so that's a very normal thing. I mean, I still have imposter syndrome to this day. It's a very normal thing. I was not a natural at this. I'm introvert by nature. So like just being on camera was a big struggle. And that takes reps. That takes reps. I mean, you should see. I still have the first video I ever made. It's not like public out there, but I save it just because of how cringy it is and how uncomfortable I was. Um, and it's just like every video I get more and more comfortable, and that's like I said, it takes reps. As far as like credentials and whatnot, like experience to be able to actually teach what you've got. My story is also a testament to that as well, because I was not a piano teacher. I wasn't even that great at the piano. I had never taught anybody piano in person. And I created one of the top online courses in piano of all time. Um, and it's because I just had this little twist on piano, right? And I started putting it out there and it resonated with other people that are kind of like me. And so you just have to have something that you can share with somebody else. You don't need to be an expert. You just have to have, something like you have to be one step ahead of somebody else or just like
Mhm.
know how to do something in like a different way than the mainstream for it to work out.
I'm imagining there's some fledgling course creators listening who go, yeah, intuitively they know it and they're being called, right? So many of us are like, yeah, it's just pulling me. You can help suss that out of somebody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Um, Financial wise, I'm imagining that's the next big hurdle, is people are like, well, I'm not sure, you know, how comfortable I am spending money on something like this. And I mean, I think you spoke to it with, I lost track of the guy's name who's you just mentioned
Yeah,
is your
Spencer Russell.
yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. Yeah, Spencer Russell. What do you say to that?
Meaning like but that's actually one of the things I like most about this type of business is because you can start it on a shoestring budget, right? You don't have to join my coaching program or anybody else's coaching program. I've had people email me that like are making 30K a month just because they listen to my podcast. They're like, thank you so much for the podcast. Like, here's what I've accomplished, like taking your advice, you know? Um, so the biggest expense is going to be some sort of software to execute your course, like a Kajabi or something.
Mm.
So, you can get away with, and there's cheaper tools. That's in my opinion the best one, but there's cheaper tools than that. So you could spend $100 or $200 a month, um, if you wanted to. It's like I never really wanted to be an entrepreneur because I didn't like it seemed like such a headache. Like I thought you'd have to have a brick and mortar presence and like get like um go into a lot of debt, like get financial backing of some sort. Like it just seemed like a big financial headache. But this you can start on very, very low budget, um, and then try to only spend the money that you're actually making. So
Mm. I love that.
yeah.
It's great. I want to be cognizant of time. You've been very generous. Thank you so much, Jock. I'm going to hit stop and we will say goodbye offline.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mischa.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.